Imagine standing beside a fire 40,000 years ago. The air smells like smoke and animal fat. Somewhere behind you, a child is asleep against your leg. Beside you, the person you've built a life with, the one you hunt with, grieve with, survive with. And then someone new walks into the firelight. You don't know them. You'll probably never see them again after tonight. But something in your chest tightens anyway. Why? If humans were built for one partner, why does a stranger by a fire still mean something? And if humans were built for many partners, why does the thought of losing the person beside you feel like losing the ground under your feet? Here's the uncomfortable part. That question isn't ancient history. You've felt it, maybe last week, maybe in a relationship right now, maybe in a single look across a room that meant nothing and somehow meant everything. We like to believe this is a modern problem. Dating apps, temptation at our fingertips, endless choice. It isn't modern at all. It's older than language, older than agriculture, older, probably, than this exact spot by the fire ever had a name. So we're going to answer it properly, not with opinions, not with relationship advice, with evidence, bones, DNA, hunter-gatherer marriages that still exist today, and one number buried inside the human Y chromosome that should not be possible. By the end, you won't just understand ancient humans, you'll understand why your last relationship felt the way it did, and you'll never look at jealousy, yours or anyone else's, quite the same way again. Let's start with the comfortable answer, the one that feels obviously true. Humans are built for one partner, right? Look at the evidence. Pair bonding, one man, one woman, raising children together, shows up almost everywhere humans exist. Even in cultures that technically allow a man to have more than one wife, most people still end up pairing off one partner, one household, one fire. Anthropologists call this social monogamy, and it's strangely universal. Even societies that permit polygyny rarely practice it widely. So maybe the mystery's already solved. Humans pair bond. Case closed. Go home. Except, if we were really built for exactly one partner, the way, say, certain birds are, mating for life with almost mechanical loyalty, you'd expect our bodies to look like it. You'd expect us to be calm about fidelity, unbothered by rivals, quietly, efficiently, for one. We are not calm about this. We are, frankly, a mess about this. We write entire genres of music about it. We build courtrooms around it. We have a word, heartbreak, that we use for something that, biologically speaking, is just a relationship ending. Spotify has entire playlists built around it. So does every group chat at 1 in the morning. That's not what a species built for effortless monogamy looks like. So either the comfortable answer is wrong, or there's something underneath it we haven't looked at yet. There is, and it's written directly into the body. Here's where it gets weird. Compare 3 species: chimpanzees, gorillas, humans. Chimpanzee testes are enormous relative to body size. That's not a random biological quirk, it's a weapon. In a species where females mate with multiple males in a single fertile window, sperm has to compete, sometimes from multiple males within hours of each other. Bigger testes, more sperm, better odds. Chimp bodies are built for a mating free-for-all, and every part of their anatomy is optimized for that fight. Gorillas are the opposite story, one dominant male. A harem of females. Massive size difference between males and females because males aren't competing with sperm, they're competing with fists and shoulders and sheer mass. Win the fight. Win every female in the group. Lose, and you get nothing. No backup plan. No participation trophy. Now look at humans. We're not built like chimps. We're not built like gorillas. Our testes sit almost exactly in the middle. Let that sit for a second. That's not poetry. That's anatomy. Somewhere in our evolutionary past, our bodies were hedging a bet between 2 completely different mating strategies and never fully committed to either one. It's like evolution opened 2 tabs and never closed either one. Somewhere an ancient ancestor is shrugging, which means the comfortable answer, humans are just built for one partner, was wrong, or at least incomplete. So maybe the truth is the opposite. Maybe ancient humans were closer to chaos. Tribes ruled by the strongest man, with everyone else fighting over the leftovers. That's the image most people have in their heads. The caveman with the club, the one alpha, the crowd of women behind him. It's also almost entirely fiction. You've seen this scene before, in documentaries, in movies, in your imagination. The alpha caveman, 20 women, everyone else losing. There's a problem with that story. It almost never happened. The Hadza, a hunter-gatherer people in Tanzania who still live a version of the ancestral lifestyle today, give us a living window into this. And what we find isn't a harem, it's a soap opera. One partner, a breakup, a new partner, another breakup, remarriage. Researchers studying Hadza marriage describe it as essentially serial monogamy. Relationships that form, dissolve, and reform again and again across a lifetime. Polygyny, one man, multiple wives, barely registers. When it does happen, it rarely lasts. And the Hadza aren't an outlier. Across the vast majority of hunter-gatherer societies studied, most men were not sharing wives. Alpha male with a harem image, the one Hollywood loves, describes maybe a sliver of human history, concentrated among a small number of high-status men, not the species as a whole, which is kind of unbelievable considering how confidently we've all pictured it the other way. Turns out, ancient humans also had relationship drama. They just couldn't text their ex. The gossip spread slower. The consequences didn't. So, no harems, no chaos, mostly one partner at a time, repeated across a life. That should be the tidy ending. It is not the ending. Because if multiple partners weren't outright forbidden, the next discovery breaks the story completely. Imagine your child has two fathers, not a stepfather, not a half-sibling situation. Two men both biologically recognized by the entire community as having helped create the same child. That sounds like science fiction. It isn't. In parts of South America, among groups like the Aché and the Barí, there existed, and in some places still exists, a belief called partible paternity. The idea that a single pregnancy could come from more than one man. That contributing multiple times with multiple partners could mean multiple biological fathers for the same baby. Here's the part that should stop you. It wasn't treated as betrayal. It was treated as backup. Each recognized father held some obligation to that child: food, protection, support. And in studied populations, children with multiple recognized fathers sometimes had better survival outcomes than children with just one. Read that again. What looks to modern eyes like the deepest possible betrayal was, in some ancient communities, a survival strategy. More fathers meant more meat brought back from a hunt. More adults willing to fight for that child if danger came. More odds the kid made it to adulthood. We call it cheating. They might have called it insurance. That's not chaos. That's not even confusion. That's calculation. Here's the uncomfortable question that follows. Was this an accident? A species that simply hadn't figured out monogamy yet? Probably not. Researchers studying these systems increasingly suspect something colder and, frankly, more impressive. This wasn't confusion. It may have been strategy on both sides. A woman maintaining ambiguity about paternity wasn't necessarily being careless. She may have been securing investment from multiple men at once, protection from one, food from another, alliance from a third. And the men tolerating that ambiguity weren't necessarily being naive either. Some access, even shared, even uncertain, may have been better than none. This wasn't a species stumbling around, not yet evolved enough to understand fidelity. This was a species running a system, a calculated, often unspoken negotiation between desire, investment, and survival, playing out over and over, fire after fire, generation after generation. Your ancestors weren't more innocent than you. They were just as strategic. They just didn't have a word for it yet. And for a staggering stretch of human history, tens of thousands of years, this rough, flexible, locally negotiated balance more or less held, until something broke it, permanently. Picture two timelines. Before property, you can't own land. You move, you hunt, you gather, you share. There's nothing large enough to inherit, so there's nothing large enough to fight over. After property, you can own land, livestock, stored grain, wealth that doesn't disappear when the season changes. And the moment that happens, one quiet question becomes enormous. Who gets it when I die? Suddenly, paternity isn't just an emotional question, it's an economic one. Suddenly, virginity matters. Suddenly, marriage isn't a relationship. It's a legal claim. Suddenly, a woman's body becomes something with property value attached to it. This is one of the strongest reversals in the entire story, because almost everyone assumes the opposite. That civilization improved relationships, made them more refined, more equal. The genetic evidence says otherwise. Geneticists studying ancient DNA found something startling after the rise of agriculture: a sharp global collapse in Y chromosome diversity, meaning male genetic lineages across multiple continents started disappearing at a scale that doesn't happen by accident, not a population crash. Population was fine. Specific male lines were being erased generation after generation, while a small number of powerful men fathered a disproportionate share of children. Sit with that for a second. This isn't a story about one famous king with 12 wives. This is genetic proof, written into the DNA of people alive today, that entire bloodlines of ordinary men simply stopped, vanished, outcompeted permanently by men who controlled land instead of just hunting it. Somewhere in your family tree, a line like that simply ran out, not from bad luck, but because someone else owned the field next door. Property didn't just create inequality in wealth, it created inequality in who got to have children at all. That should have been the end of the species balance entirely. Total domination by the powerful. No system, no fairness, no cooperation. Just the strongest men winning everything forever. It wasn't, because every society on Earth faced with this exact threat built the same emergency response. You were probably taught that marriage exists because humans fell in love and decided to make it official. That's backwards. Marriage doesn't show up in human history as a celebration. It shows up as a containment system. Think about what unmanaged desire does to a group once property and inheritance are involved. One powerful man taking multiple partners doesn't just affect those partners, it means other men get none. No partner, no children, no future. In a small, tightly bonded community, that's not a personal disappointment. That's a man with absolutely nothing left to lose. Picture him at the edge of the firelight, watching everyone else pair off, doing the math nobody wants to say out loud. Every culture independently arrived at the same emergency solution: rules, marriage, adultery laws, inheritance structures, kinship obligations. Not because humans suddenly became romantic, but because a species capable of partible paternity and capable of total reproductive monopoly needed something to keep desire from tearing the entire group apart. You assumed marriage came from love. It came from damage control. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Every wedding vow, every "till death do us part," every modern argument about commitment, sitting on top of a foundation that was never built for romance in the first place. It was built to keep a species from destroying itself, which leaves exactly one question, the only one that actually matters. If marriage isn't really about love, then what exactly is love? Here's where everything you've just watched gets rewritten. We've been treating love like the reward in this story. The nice part, the soft landing after all the cold, calculated biology. It isn't the reward, it's the leash. Evolution never needed you to feel devoted. It needed you to behave devoted, long enough to raise a child that takes years, not months, to become independent. And the most efficient way to guarantee that behavior generation after generation wasn't a rulebook. It was a feeling so overwhelming you'd follow it without question. We call it falling in love. Evolution called it childcare, which is a fairly unromantic way to explain why you checked your phone 40 times after a first date. That obsessive infatuation, that gut-deep loyalty, that devastating ache when it ends. None of it exists because evolution wanted you happy. Evolution never promised happiness. Only grandchildren. Every fact in this film was quietly building toward this one sentence. The body that hedges between chimp and gorilla. The harems that mostly never existed. The children with two fathers. The calculated ambiguity. The bloodlines erased by property. All of it was evidence in the same case. The case that desire, left completely unregulated, was too dangerous for any group of humans to survive. So evolution didn't eliminate desire. It wrapped desire in something that felt like devotion and called it love, so you'd never notice you were being managed. Your brain is running software older than farming, and the oldest argument in your relationship, the one about trust, about attention, about someone else's name lingering a second too long in a conversation, may have started before history was even being written down. Jealous feeling you've had? It isn't a flaw in your personality. It's a 100,000-year-old alarm system, still wired exactly the way it was the night someone walked into a firelit camp and a stranger's presence made someone's chest go tight for reasons they couldn't name. You're not watching ancient history, you're watching your own brain. So, back to the question. Were humans ever meant to have just one partner? No. Also, not exactly not. Humans were built for a contradiction that was never meant to resolve. A body caught between two ancient strategies, a mind wired for both loyalty and temptation, a species that invented marriage not because it discovered love, but because it discovered what happens without rules. There's no clean verdict here. There never was one. You are not living after this question got answered. You are still inside the experiment. Every jealous text you've ever sent, every relationship that ended and somehow still aches months later, every time you felt the pull of something new while sitting right next to someone you love, every wedding, every divorce, every late night argument about nothing that was secretly about everything. All of it is the same fire. The stranger is still walking into the firelight. The only thing that's changed is the century.